Hello and welcome back to Substream. I'm Joseph, a guy who thought he knew what quantum computing was and what it meant until somebody asked me to explain it. Spoiler, I couldn't. So today's video is all about cutting through the mystery and my own confusion to uncover what quantum computing actually is, how it works, why it matters, and where we'll end up if we get it right and if we get it wrong. Let's go. Now, what I can tell you is that during research for this video, I discovered that I don't actually know a lot about quantum computing. Very small amount. So I thought the best way to deliver this video to you is to use metaphors and stories to help you understand quantum too. Now, if you already know quantum at a scientific or high technological level, you can just subscribe and go because this probably doesn't have a lot of value to you. But if you keep hearing quantum computing in the news and you want to stick around and learn, here's how it goes. I would say if you imagine, let's say, a Rubik's Cube, right? And you have a computer that can check every single possible answer at once, instantly, right? Perhaps I need to go back another step. What is a bit, right? A bit is short for a binary digit. Now that's the smallest unit of data possible, and it represents a single binary value of, you know it, 0 or 1, right? And they are the fundamental building blocks of all digital information and computer operations and systems, right? So since a binary digit or a bit can only be 0 or 1, let's consider it like a light switch, right? On or off, right? So in quantum computing, you don't have bits, you have qubits, quantum bits, right? Makes sense? Now, these are the fundamental units of quantum information. Now, unlike binary or bits, 0, 1, on-off situation that we've explained, qubits can exist in multiple states. So they can be 0, 1, or a superposition of both at the same time. That's kind of confusing. Let's slow down. Now, don't worry if you're a little bit confused about the idea of 0, 1 and somewhere in between at the same time. Quantum is not easy. It's so complicated, in fact, that the world's best computer scientists are still trying to figure it out. Building quantum computers is not easy. It's super complex and expensive and energy intensive, and we may still be a few years away from the first proper, fully functioning, super useful quantum machine. Now, there are quantum computers. They're just not yet at the power that the computer scientists really want to get them to. So what will it be like, I suppose, when we do get there, when we reach the level of quantum computing? It will be something like going from horse-drawn carriages to Ferrari F1 engines, like that. It will be a massive leap for human technological capability and computer science, like no other before. I'm serious. That's how big quantum computing is, and that's why it's in the news. It's arguably going to be more powerful than AI, and that's why you should keep watching. And if you're enjoying this video so far, go down and hit subscribe. Please support us. It's free. We share our sources and we have no agenda, really. So let's go to the next part. Now, I'm really honored to introduce one of my clients. He's a wonderful guy, a lovely, friendly guy, but he has an incredible background in computer science. So this is Tahir Mahmood, and yeah, he's a world-class computer scientist with about 40 years of experience across all parts of tech and coding, programming, designing, inventing everything. He invented push email, the ability to read email from your phone, which 4.8 billion people use every day. He has worked with some of the biggest companies in the world, bringing wonderful tech ideas and inventions. But he has a real passion for quantum computing, and he's told me about it before, which is why I'm very excited to introduce again Mr. Tahir Mahmood. Roll the clip. Okay, and welcome Tahir Mahmood. Tahir, would you like to introduce yourself?
So yes, Tahir Mahmood, I'm the co-founder of Kernel Labs. but also someone who's been in the tech industry for over 40 years.
Awesome. And I'm gonna jump right into it. I've introduced you in the video already. So, we're talking all about quantum computing. So, what is quantum computing in your own words?
Ultimately, I mean, if you think of it this way, we've been working with microchips and transistors now, for many, many decades, and we keep miniaturizing, sorry, them as much as possible to the point that, we can have so many of them, where the amount of space between each transistor is so little that we've now got to the point where the electrons are interfering with each other, and you really can't minimize or put any more transistors onto a chip without finding some other ways of doing it. So you could almost sort of say we're reaching the limitations of that technology. And quantum computing is just another way of being able to scale where we can get even more miniature, but then really at the end of the day with the full power of parallel processing. So it's not just a miniaturization exercise, it's about how can we do parallel processing at a scale that has never been possible. And that's really what quantum computing and qubits is all about.
What do you believe are some of the great benefits that quantum computing can bring to the next generation of tech?
I guess it's a lot based on where we are in time. Where we are today is at the very early journey, and that very early journey is that the technology is still a little bit fragile, you could call it. And what that means is what we can apply in terms of the number of qubits, and ultimately those qubits, depending on how many there are, determines the amount of processing power you really have. So we're at the start of the journey, and as much as you've got people like Microsoft creating their Mojana chip, and Google working on their side of things, we're still at that stage where the technology is early days, and but what we're able to prove at this moment in time is that we have it working, that we have, the ability to ask it, a certain number of, with a certain number of qubits to solve a particular type of problem. And that's, I think, something that most people need to understand. Quantum computing isn't regular computing, and it's not generalized computing where you use it to do Word or Excel or PowerPoint. You give it hard problems to solve, the kind of problems where, even if you use traditional computing, let's say it would have taken the best supercomputer in the world using transistors, let's say 10,000 years to solve. That doesn't mean quantum computing can just be given that problem and it'll just do it quicker. Quantum computing, the way it is, it has specific calculations and problems it can solve. So it can solve particular problems, and those particular problems would be things which even a traditional computer might take 10,000 years to solve, and it will do it in minutes, if not seconds.
So yeah, I mean, I've been saying there's, healthcare is definitely one. We can get solutions to molecular problems, for example. On the other side, do you think that we should fear quantum computing? I've read some instances where people believe that quantum and AI could be our downfall. Do you think there's ways to use it maliciously?
Well, the point is, I mean, you could use anything maliciously. I mean, the whole point at the end of the day is that AI has this big thing about at the moment to do with, how do you provide the governance around AI to make sure that it doesn't go rogue and it doesn't become Skynet from Terminator, right? Ultimately, I mean, if you think of it this way, we hold the power to it. Now, agentic agents are those that learn by themselves and they communicate with each other, and they're sort of towards an end goal, that end objective and goal that you set, that brief is what they work towards. Now, if somebody creates a brief which sort of says, I do want to create something that will mean that your car will take over it because it's a Tesla and decide it's going to run into a brick wall. AI didn't do that. Somebody put that that objective into AI. So is it AI or is it humans? But I think the big one that most people talk about, which they fear is you tell AI, we'd like you to make it that we do something which helps benefits mankind, but then AI sort of learns itself and becomes self-aware enough to sort of go, well, the actual way to solve the problem that humans have. And to give an example is humans have cancer, and it sort of goes, you know what, the best way to solve cancer is just to kill all humans so you don't have cancer.
No, that's a kind of dark possibility. So I know like quantum computing's been in development for a long time. Is it now just a matter of time, or are there still kind of big hurdles in the way stopping us from getting there?
So I think, it's like all technology. You can spend many decades, and then suddenly there's this moment where 2 + 2 really just come together, and you're like, you know what, we've managed to get over the big hurdle, and now it's just a question of optimizing it, tuning it, and so forth. So to give you an example, with quantum computing, it was all about how to make it operate at a point where it's very stable, and that was done at obviously very low temperatures of Kelvin zero and so forth. And the whole idea being is that when you have 2 qubits that are entangled, which again is a dark art. And to give an example, there's nothing, nobody's explained how this entanglement works. So as an example, to give you an example, so today we transmit data from one place to another, and basically there is a medium by which we transfer it. So the fastest medium we know happens to be the speed of light. Okay, so we could say, okay, fine. So how did we do that? Well, we have fiber optics, and one computer communicates to another with fiber optics. With quantum computing entanglement, we just don't know how are these 2 qubits entangled. Einstein, nobody's been able to explain how they're done. So when one it sort of changes state to a certain point, so does the other, and it happens instantaneously, and it happens at a faster speed than light, right? So we don't even know how it's done, but we know it happens. So now you're not actually transmitting data, right? So I could literally have a quantum computer on planet Earth and another one gazillion light years away, which would normally take a gazillion light years to get to even data. But with quantum, when one is a change, the other one's done it as well instantly. There's no delay. So even we are beyond the speed of light.
Well, if we can manipulate that, then it makes space exploration more possible then.
Well, if you say exploration, it just means communication. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, yeah, if we're going to be interplanetary human beings, we would think that, if I made it from here to the moon and it still takes a couple of seconds for data or transmission to get one place to another, it would mean there would be no delay, no lag, no latency. What we do here is expressed on anywhere on the planet, anywhere, no matter where it may be. So communication certainly would become, but it also means, and this is the one I love about it, is that if you think of it this way, from a pure point of security and cybersecurity, if somebody wants to be able to tap the communication, there's no way to tap any communication, because unless you work out literally how qubits transfer data from one to another, meaning how do they communicate are entangled, there is nothing in the middle.
So in theory, it'd be like unhackable. But then on the other side, about encryption, right? Quantum, in theory, could hack anything, right? It could decrypt any password or code or wallet address or something, right? How are you building protect yourself from quantum's capabilities in the future?
So the main thing is when people think quantum computing can break any cipher, any encryption, that's wrong. I mean, so the current mechanisms we use based on the fact they were created to deal with regular computers meant that those encryption algorithms and ciphers deal with making that incredibly hard. That should take thousands, if not millions of years to do. But at the same time, there is a lot of research and a lot of practically implemented work that's that quantum resistance, that's what they call it. So even quantum computing could not break, even if it was the most powerful qubits thing on the planet or on any planet. So to be fair with you, the worry that it will hack or break anything. So that's where a lot of people are now, starting to move into technologies which go beyond the current schemes of encryption and cipher to those that are quantum resistant, and they do exist.
Brilliant. And at Kernel, are you building for a quantum future or to protect yourself from quantum?
Yeah, so at Kernel, one of the key things is our technology is built from the ground up to use cryptography. That's how we do what we do. So compared to a lot of other companies that use it, whether it's using, some kind of restaking or financial incentives to protect or dissuade people from doing harm, we do it with pure cryptography. And yeah, we've already tested and played with the sort of schemes that are, quantum proof. So yeah, I mean, we're ready for that. So let's say that technology to be available. But again, at the end of the day, the lowest denominator is not what we control. So if you think of Bitcoin and the technology it uses, yes, quantum computing is very likely to break that. But the people who are building Bitcoin and the people who are building Ethereum, these are the blockchains, they know that's coming. And as part of their roadmap, they're going to have to build this quantum resistance. So, when we see bigger use of quantum computing, but all that said, how do we know right now that, nation states and, bad actors who maybe have access to the kind of money to build quantum computers are not already using the ability to tap and listen to everything we're doing, no matter what encryption we put over it. And I'm a great believer that majority of the governments actually are already doing it with tools like quantum computing. It's just not visible.
Wow. There's a lot to think about that here. Thank you so much for your time and insights and knowledge, expertise. I hope my viewers really appreciate it too. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tahir. I really appreciate that. Now, I want to take you guys on a journey through history, the history of quantum computing, that is. A story that starts about a century ago in the haze of the late 1920s and stretches forward to the future where impossible becomes normal routine. So, picture this. It's the Roaring Twenties. It's a time of jazz and rebellion and post-World War One, and it's a kind of quieter time for science, right? But there's a revolution brewing, and some of the world's best scientists are kind of coming together and brainstorming and working on this idea that there might be something more. Now, you already know Albert Einstein, right? His unruly hair, his charisma, his, intense eyes, and, he's so famous as a scientist for all of the stuff he discovered. But he stepped into the ring and introduced the photoelectric effect. Now, if you haven't heard of that before, it's basically proof that light can act as both a wave and a particle. Now, this sparked a real firestorm of ideas at the time, and scientists, engaged in intense debate over whether this was accurate and what it meant. And across the table, you had Niels Bohr, right? So Niels Bohr, he was sharp, unrelenting, and he wanted to spar with Einstein and debate. He engaged in this debate that, is still being debated today, and that's really significant. But having that, let's say, Niels Bohr playing the devil's advocate helped Einstein to refine his idea and get it more accurate. And Einstein said this: God doesn't play dice. Now, I don't like to bring God into science or bring science to God, but Einstein grumbled and he rejected the randomness of quantum mechanics, right? There is something quite random about quantum mechanics when you get deeper into it, as scientists will tell you. But God doesn't roll dice is Einstein's way of saying this is how it is and it's by design. And so, continuing our history story, the dice were cast and quantum mechanics was born. And it was a strange new world where particles could exist in multiple states at once, entangled across vast differences. Now, I once was told by a scientist that if quantum mechanics were able to be controlled properly, you could send a machine to the moon and have an identical machine on Earth, and using quantum mechanics, you could use the device here to control the device there. I didn't really understand it. I still don't think I do. But let's fast forward to 1985, and we have a new character. This is David Deutsch. He's a lanky Oxford physicist with a gleam in his eye and a mind that bends the rules of computation. He was very advanced for his time. Now, I want you to picture him. He's sat in his cluttered office, a pile of books, a messy chalkboard, and he's sat there, he's grinding away at some equations, and suddenly, a universal quantum algorithm strikes him, right? Like an actual light bulb. Can we put an actual light bulb here? He said, if we can simulate physics efficiently, Why not harness quantum weirdness to compute what classical machines cannot, right? It's a quiet moment, right? But that proposition from Deutsch, he basically sets the scene, or it's the opening chapter of quantum computing and the grand saga that is ongoing, right, for decades and decades. That was 1985. 4 decades later, we're really still not there, so it's quite incredible. But it was a great theoretical spark. Now we leap to 1994, and we've got Peter Shaw. He's a mathematician with a knack for breaking things, right, as some scientists have to. He unveiled an algorithm that could crack RSA encryption. That's like an kind of old technology for passcodes, and that guards everything from your bank account to state secrets. And he basically figured out a way to break it. And overnight, quantum mechanics morphed, right, from an academic curiosity into a kind of double-edged sword, because he proposed that quantum mechanics could be used for malicious reasons, right? It became an existential threat to cryptography, and a golden opportunity, I suppose, for those evil enough to wield it for nefarious reasons. Now, the story accelerates into the late 90s and early 2000s, where the dream starts taking physical form and quantum continues to expand. And in labs at IBM and MIT, like 2 of the biggest, most powerful, brainiest labs in the world, engineers in white coats, they began to wrestle with the building blocks of the new frontier. Remember back at the start when we talked about qubits? Yes, here comes qubits. Now, let me tell you about qubits, right? Some qubits are crafted from superconducting loops. They're chilled to temperatures colder than outer space, while others are just like trapped ions suspended in electromagnetic cages or fleeting photons zipping through optical mazes. So there's different kinds of qubits, and to make them or capture them, it's actually a heroic effort. You've got humanity, the evolved ape, trying to coax the subatomic world into doing its bidding, and I think that's flipping amazing. I love technology, and hopefully you do too, that's why you're here. But every tale needs a twist, okay? And ours arrives in the mid-2010s with the D-Wave, and that's a company that basically came along to stir the pot, let's say, with something called quantum annealing. So D-Wave came along with these hulking, futuristic machines that promised to solve optimization problems faster than anything else in the world could, or any other company or lab or anything. And the scientific community got into this heated debate. Are these contraptions really quantum? Are they even really useful, or are they just some kind of overhyped sideshow? Critics sharpened their pencils. Supporters fired back with opposing data, let's call it. Now, the jury is still out, even in 2025, but the controversy actually inspired greater curiosity. So I think there's a word for that in science, I can't think of it right now, where a failed experiment, or an experiment that didn't go to plan, actually helps long term. I want to jump forward to 2019, where Google introduces Sycamore. You may have heard of Sycamore. You may have just heard of the sycamore tree. But Sycamore is a processor built by Google. It's like a quantum gunslinger, and it, definitely was, at the time at least, the most powerful quantum computer in the world. And they did a demonstration for other scientists, and it took about 200 seconds, or just over 3 minutes, to tackle this super complex problem, sampling random quantum circuits that Google claimed would take any other classical supercomputer about 10,000 years to solve. So it's quite a mean feat. You can picture this, kind of sleek machine humming away, doodle 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 doodle, working with the qubits, and all the scientists watching on, like, oh my god, we're so far behind, like this is so ahead of us. But then some of the scientists watching were quite skeptical about it, including IBM, who basically said, that was shit, that was a gimmick, what a load of nonsense, you've rigged this in your favor, any old supercomputer could do this in a few days, this is not a true test. So in the end, some people look at Sycamore as a stunt rather than scientific progress. Now, by 2023, IBM had kind of backed up what they were saying. They had accused Sycamore of being kind of not great. So they, rightfully had to do one better. And they did, and they created the Osprey chip. That is a quantum beast, absolute beast. Apparently it packs 433 qubits. It's a workhorse. It's an absolute monster. It's a sign of the hardware revolution just absolutely hitting its stride. Now, the graph of progress shows that, right? You see along the way, and then you've got Sycamore, and then boom, it just absolutely flies off with Osprey, basically. It was just a huge leap skyward, and it kind of helped scientists see that this future with quantum machines is coming, right? Now, what that means is hard to say, right? There's mysteries are going to be unraveled, from cryptography to chemistry to healthcare to maths. Quantum will be able to solve pretty much everything, right? In theory, it should be able to cure cancer on day one. That's how powerful we're talking. The only problem is qubits are a bit crazy and fragile and volatile. Let me explain. Picture yourself as a quantum scientist. You're in the quantum workshop with your quantum lab coat and your little quantum hat, your little quantum goggles, and you're dreaming about a quantum future, but something's standing in your quantum way. What is it? Qubits don't behave nicely. They don't behave as they should. They're like naughty children, right? And let's put it back into the Rubik's Cube little metaphor that I used earlier. Put it like this, right? You've got the Rubik's Cube, you're twisting, the colours are just starting to come together, you're almost there, and somebody grabs you by the wrist and starts shaking your hand so that you can't bloody twist the thing. That's qubits, right? They are unstable by nature, right? What that is that, how to say it, quantum states can collapse as the outside world butts in on them. So unobserved, they do their thing. When observed, they kind of fall apart. It's really weird. There's another issue. It's called error correction. And now, it's a Herculean task where you'd need millions of flawless workers working around the clock, around every single qubit to make it work. Now, in the real world, you'd have one assistant. So that's kind of a lot to ask. And finally, this is the one that I find most interesting personally. Scalability, right? I said earlier, there's 433 qubits in the most powerful computer that we know, the most powerful quantum computer. Because stacking qubits is like stacking Legos underwater with a blindfold on. With each new piece, the tower wobbles. Each qubit you add creates more instability to the quantum computer, which kind of, makes sense, right? But there's basically a scalability problem. And that's partially down to do with the temperature needs. Yes, this little computer things, these qubits that are so hard to visualize and explain, they actually need to be at near zero temperatures, or absolute zero. Minus 273 degrees Celsius, to be precise. Why there? Well, because that's 0 Kelvin, also known as absolute zero. That's the lowest temperature thought possible, at least in our planet and atmosphere and all that. That's colder than outer space. And that's where qubits actually work and thrive, which makes them incredibly difficult and complex and frustrating. Now, I've done my best to explain what is quantum computing. I've given you the history. I've even given you an interview with a quantum expert, right? What more can we do? Well, perhaps I can tell you about the current state of quantum computing. It's a high-stakes race, and the winner is, going to be winning quantum supremacy. And there will be just one winner, because the winner is the one that has the most qubits in their quantum computer. And so you have like all of these big tech players basically jostling for the lead, and they're all going about it in different ways. Now, let's start with IBM, right? We talked about Osprey and the success of that model. But now they're kind of taking a different approach. They have their friendly hand outstretched, and they're offering cloud-based platforms that anyone can tinker with, through what they call an open science initiative. It's pretty much like a open research, open-sourced initiative for anybody, an online lab, let's say, for anyone with a curious mind who thinks they can tackle this problem. And wants to have a look at all the existing quantum research to try and improve upon it. Now, that's quite interesting. That's like crowdsourcing the solution, if possible. Now, Google is playing a different game. Google, they had Sycamore in the past, but what they're doing now is they're kind of doing a hybrid approach. They're blending quantum computing with classical supercomputing, I don't know if that's particularly effective, but, it may be working for them. Who knows? Google always surprises me with the quality of the stuff they put out. Microsoft is also in the game, and they have a bit of a wild card approach, which is called topological qubits, but it's still mostly theoretical, right? It's not proven or in practice yet. And from other part of the world, let's say the most powerful quantum computer out of China is China's Zhushangxi 2. It's a 66 qubit power horse. So, it's a sixth or 1/7 the size of Osprey, but it kind of is under a veil of secrecy. We don't really know the full story. But the Chinese seem pretty confident that they already have quantum supremacy, so maybe they do. Maybe they've already figured it out and they just haven't told the rest of the world or the West, right? So who knows? Now the question is, with all of this power, all of these theories, what are they doing with it? What is the point of quantum computing? We're finally getting there. Now, in the real world, quantum is being used, right? There are small quantum computers and they are able to be applied to different things. One area that's having a lot of success is drugs. Not the bad kind, but the good kind, right? Like medicine. It's got a real boost. So that's because quantum computing can act as like a molecular matchmaker, right? It understands how to optimize interactions between molecules much faster and more efficiently than any lab coat guy or woman ever could, right, in an actual lab. So that's one application. And like I mentioned earlier, they could solve cancer with this. They could solve pretty much all human illnesses. Now, I know there's a lot of stuff we've talked about on this channel in the past about extending lifespans and, improving our health and stuff. But quantum computing could be the be-all and end-all, the solution to extend human life. Just a theory. It's not just healthcare. Logistics is quite an interesting one, but DHL, the shipping and delivery company, they've actually invested quite a lot in quantum computing because map technology is not at its end state, right? There's still so much more we can do for mapping. And when it comes to route planning, it all relies on algorithms that are not 100% effective. Actually, there's so many more data points that are needed to plan the perfect route to avoid traffic and incidents and congestion, these kind of things. To deliver a package like a perfectly laid chess piece is something that quantum computing can also help with. Another one I'm quite interested in, let me get here, is climate modeling, right? So I used to work in the sustainability space, and the issue is, you don't really know what's coming. You've got forecasts, but they're not perfect. You can model the next few days or week of weather, but it may change. Strong winds can change stuff. Now, what about if you're thinking longer term, months, years, decades? Humans have this difficulty to think in space-time, to think about long-term changes. And we literally live on a warming planet with an increased rate of natural disasters. hard to deny that, right? That is a fact of life. What if a quantum computer could solve that and model the future climate and give us the actionable information that we need to solve it? A cleaner world, healthier people, with perfect deliveries. Is that the future of quantum computing? By the way, guys, if you're enjoying this video, please go smash that subscribe button. And look, we've done everything organically here. We've got no social media. We're just right here. We're here, you and me, this video. This is it. And that's how we wanted it to be. And so, you know, if you're not subscribed, if you're watching this and you're not subscribed, it really does help us. You might think it's just a meaningless click, but it means the world to us because it helps us get towards our end goal, which is helping inform more people. Substreamers. Sorry, trying to get comfy. Substreamers, take a deep breath and close your eyes for a moment. Join me. Deep breath. Now, keep your eyes closed. I want you to imagine a future where quantum computing unfurls a rich and beautiful tapestry of wonders and warnings of a tale teetering on the edge of brilliance and peril. Now, on one side, the hero, the bright side, you have these medical and technological breakthroughs that dazzle, that change the reality of life for humans on Earth. They inspire us, they heal us, they fix us, and they may bring peace and prosperity to all. That's the bright side. Now, keep your eyes closed. Deep breath. There's the dark side. Flip the coin. Nightmares loom. Cybersecurity crumbles as Shor's algorithm, which is weaponized logic, shatters SHA 256, which is like, you know, the current premium grade of security. And that basically leaves your bank account defenseless. Basically, a quantum computer could figure out all of your bank details and rob you blind immediately. You'd never know. That's really scary. Now, when we've got a good side and a bad side, of course, there's an ethical crossroads. You know, will quantum split the world into haves and have-nots, right? The haves who can access quantum computing and the have-nots who basically suffer whatever it decides to do. Will quantum computing be used to forge unbreakable ciphers for kind of dystopian surveillance and control? Could quantum computing give AI the firepower it needs to throw over or overthrow the human power? It's perhaps. Now, think about it, because your choices today, or the choices of computer sciences today, could shape this saga before these machines ever even hum into life. That's a big thing to think about. Now, before we wrap up this video and I give you a nice clean little conclusion and outro, I actually want to tell you about some trends for quantum computing, things that you may see in the news this year, because I'm seeing loads of quantum stuff in the news and not quite sure what to make of it all. So here are some trends. I've done the research so you don't have to, basically, but these 6 trends for this year. What was an ant in my place? Well, basically, you're going to be seeing more experiments with logical qubits. You're going to see more specialized hardware for quantum computing and more specialized software too, you know, as opposed to universal quantum computing. You're going to see more networking, noisy, intermediate scale quantum devices together. I'm not quite sure what that means, but the trend research I did told me that. Let me repeat that. Noisy intermediate scale quantum devices. Go and Google it. I'm not quite sure. There will be more layers of software abstraction. That means you don't even realize you're interacting with something. It just happens. And more workforce development tools that use quantum computing, basically to solve problems, and improved and novel physical qubits. These are some trends. Now, if any of those sound interesting, you can go ahead and Google them. I guess all of this has got me thinking now, are we ready for the next technological leap, right? We've got wars all over the place. The world's a bit of a mess. We've got so many social and financial crises going on. It feels like there's something new every month. I mean, there was a massacre in India, there was, the Pope just died. There's all this stuff going on. Are we really ready to leap forward technologically when we're not even handling what we have right now very well? Even the technology we have right now, we've got social media, dopamine addiction, we've got hackers and cyber criminals, all this stuff. You introduce quantum computing, it's like throwing fireworks into a small gathering. It's very hard to justify, I think. I really think it's such a complex thing to do. I think we're setting ourselves up for chaos by doing it. So I can only hope or plead that the scientists at IBM and Google and Microsoft and wherever else, use it responsibly, because there are some real concerns. And if you listening to this, wait, let me come over. If you listening to this have some concerns and are worried about what the future looks like because of quantum computing, please go drop a comment below. That would be really cool, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. But substreamers, that's it for this week. I want to just say, I'm sorry that I'm doing this from home. I wanted to go outside. I went outside, got to the park, I recorded half of this video, and my SD card corrupted, and it's 37 degrees today, and I was melting and dripping, and it was pretty gruesome and unbearable outside. So after I'd bought a new SD card, I actually decided to come and record this at home for version 2. So yeah, sorry you don't have a beautiful backdrop of a park or something, but you get my studio apartment. Oh well, that's it for this week. Thank you for watching. Much love. I'll see you in the next video coming very soon. Once a week these days, big deep dives. Let's go.